Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the National Book Awards finalist reading. I'm Deborah Landau, Director of NYU's Creative Writing Program. We're delighted to be hosting the National Book Awards finalist reading at NYU for the fourth consecutive year. It's a privilege to be able to help celebrate and showcase the vital importance of writers and books, and I'd like to thank the National Book Foundation for entrusting us with this honor. On a personal note, this is especially sweet because NYU Creative Writing has been proud to see so many in our community honored with National Book Awards in recent years, including alumni Robin Coss-Lewis, Tess Gunty, Bruno Labata, and John Keane. Warmest thanks to everyone at Skirball for this elegant space. We love to be here. Immense gratitude to President Mills and Provost Dopico for their generous support. Special thanks also to Joanna Yaz and to Ryan Pointer for helping to make tonight possible, and also to our events assistants, Trinity Catlin and Aspen Taylor. Thank you. Now, as ever, books feel essential. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, James Baldwin famously wrote. But then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive. I'd like to extend my warmest congratulations to the finalists tonight for their extraordinary achievement. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Ruth Dickey, Executive Director of the National Book Foundation.
Thank you so much, Deborah. And good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2025 National Book Awards finalist reading. Huge heartfelt thanks to the Office of the Provost, NYU Skirball, and NYU Creative Writing Program, especially Deborah and Joanna Yas, as well as our National Book Awards Platinum sponsor, Penguin Random House, for their support. Thanks also to the wonderful staff and volunteers at the National Book Foundation, tonight's ASL interpreters, Emilio Garcia and Miriam Roquefort, our photographer, Beowulf Sheehan, and really useful media, the amazing production stream, live streaming both tonight's program and tomorrow's National Book Awards ceremony for readers everywhere. What a privilege it is to be gathered in person and virtually with people who believe, as I do, in the tremendous power of books and storytelling. What is an attack on literature if not a fear-based acknowledgement of that undeniable power? When hopelessness has threatened this fall, I have turned to the words of our 2025 National Book Award finalists. These stories have transported me, encouraged me, inspired me, prodded me, and given me hope to keep turning the page. Tonight, we'll get to witness selections from our 2025 National Book Awards finalists come to life on stage, including excerpts from the translated literature finalists read both in their original languages of Danish, Dutch, French, Spanish, and Uzbek, and their English translations. We are indebted to the 25 judges who read an unbelievable 1,835 total book submissions this year. I know. And from that pool, they somehow narrowed down their list to our 25 remarkable finalists in the categories of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, translated literature, and young people's literature. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to honor and recognize the finalists who were unable to join us this evening. Solveig Belle, author of On the Calculation of Volume, Book 3. Anya Danya, author of The Remembered Soldier. And Nej Sino, author of Sad Tiger. We're lucky to be joined this evening by special guests Tess Gunty, who will be reading alongside translator Natasha Lehrer for Nej Sino's Sad Tiger, and Joseph O'Neill, who will be reading for Anya Danya. Let's please give these finalists and special guests a round of applause. Tomorrow, we will celebrate the 76th National Book Awards ceremony, hosted by Emmy Award-winning actor, comedian, and writer Jeff Hiller, and featuring musical guest Corinne Bailey Rae. We'll recognize our 2 Lifetime Achievement honorees, Roxane Gay and George Saunders. And the winners of the 2025 National Book Awards will be announced live on stage. We hope that you'll register to watch on our website at nationalbook.org/awards. We believe that books deserve a party everyone is invited to. The funds we raise fuel our year-round work to connect books with readers of all ages through programming in all 50 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. The National Book Foundation works tirelessly to show up alongside our local partners in classrooms, libraries, book festivals, prisons, and public housing communities. This work is made possible by readers like you. Please scan the QR code on the back of your programs or text Team Book to 44321 to help us champion books every day of the year. I'd also encourage you to support the incredible authors and translators on stage directly by purchasing the 2025 National Book Awards finalists. Huge thanks to McNally Jackson for joining us on site to sell all 25 finalists. And if you haven't already, please buy at least 1 copy of each book, either at intermission or the end of the show. And now I'll turn things over to our host for the evening. Michelle Zauner is a musician and author based in New York City. She's won acclaim for her albums Psychopomp and Soft Sounds from Another Planet. Her album Jubilee earned 2 Grammy nominations for Best New Artist and Best Alternative Music Album. She's currently on tour supporting her latest record for Melancholy Brunettes and Sad Women. Her first book, Crying in H Mart, which I loved, was a #1 New York Times bestseller. In 2022, Time magazine named Michelle one of its 100 most influential people. We're tremendously lucky to have you joining us tonight, Michelle, and thank you all for being here to celebrate books with us.
Welcome to the 2025 National Book Awards finalist reading. I'm Michelle Zauner, and I'm honored to be your host for the evening. Thank you for joining us, those here in person at NYU Skirball, and the book lovers tuning in around the world. Tonight, we're celebrating the authors and translators of 25 outstanding works in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, translated literature, and young people's literature. What an extraordinary treat to hear from our finalists on one stage alongside the voices of special guests. I personally am a big fan of many of these writers, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to hear selections from their new works in their own voices, which is something we so very rarely get to witness. We don't pry writers away from their desks to celebrate them in public nearly often enough, and I think it's an extremely important thing to do. When I turned in the final draft of my first book, I remember being absolutely devastated. I had visions of myself as a certain type of writer and had landed somewhere far afield. I spent the next 9 months depressed about it until I was forced to read the book out loud for the audiobook taping and thought, okay. If you haven't yet reached this reversal of satisfaction, I hope you arrive at it while reading it out loud in front of the people here today. And I hope that you will also remember while you are reading that you are here as a National Book Award finalist. And if that is not a sign that you've done a pretty good job at this point, you may need to get over yourselves. I recently found myself reading Jonathan Franzen's infamous Harper's Essay, one of many pieces in the past 100 years despairing over the death of the American novel, victim successively to the likes of the Lumiere brothers, to Tom and Jerry, and most recently, the sloptainment scroll of 50-second AI-generated anthropomorphic cappuccinos dancing ballet and getting pregnant. With each year and each innovation in entertainment, each harrowing statistic citing the declining interest in books, it sometimes feels truly feasible that the death of the novel might actually be real this time. So before we begin, I want to thank the National Book Foundation for the special privilege of getting to be in a room full of people who still love to read, who in an act of resistance and devotion against a culture consumed by media so promisingly dubbed brain rot, have spent years dedicated to language, to thought and revision, to intellectual perseverance and curiosity, to hours and hours vacillating between the roles of omnipotent deity and sordid worm. Thank you for doing the important work of celebrating these Herculean feats, and thank you for performing them. This evening, the finalists will read by category, starting with young people's literature and ending with fiction. There will be a brief 10-minute intermission after the translated literature finalists when books are available for sale in the lobby, with thanks to my favorite bookstore in the city, McNally Jackson. For our translated literature honorees, you'll hear the text read both in the original language and in English. This year's honorees feature works originally written in Danish, Dutch, French, Spanish, and Uzbek. Throughout the evening, I will introduce each reader by name in groups. Audience, please hold your applause until the whole category is announced. Finalists, you'll wait to the side of the stage and approach the podium in alphabetical order. Now let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce the finalists for the 2025 National Book Award for Young People's Literature. Kyle Lukoff, Amber McBride, Daniel Nayeri, Hannah V. Sawyer, and Ibi Zaboy. Kyle, would you please kick things off for us tonight?
Mom rapped her knuckles on my bedroom door, then poked her head in without waiting for my response. "You're wearing that?" she asked. Well, asked isn't quite the right word. It's more like she was telling me I wouldn't be wearing that if she had anything to say about it. I am, I said anyway, because it was true. I was wearing that. That being plain black sneakers, my only pair of baggy jeans with decent pockets, and a red polo shirt I bought at a neighbor's yard sale for $1. I wished I still had the binder I got from this collective that shipped donated ones all over the world in discreet packaging, but when my mom found it, she whisked it away without a word, and I never saw it again. I figured she cut it into pieces or buried it in the trash or ritualistically burned it in the backyard. Now I squeezed myself into 2 tight sports bras. If you didn't look too closely, I could pass as a boy with unusually well-developed pectoral muscles. "Why don't you at least change your shirt, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice like that stuff they have to advertise as breakfast syrup because there's not a drop of true maple in it. Too sweet and bad for you. "I bought you those nice new blouses. I'm sure everyone at the meeting would love to see you in one." I tried to keep my body language relaxed and nonchalant while girding my mental loins. "I like this shirt," I told her. "And besides, you're the one who's always told me that girls get to wear whatever they want. If this is how I want to dress, isn't it the feminist choice to let me?" Her nostrils flared. "We both know that's not what's going on here," she said flatly. "Change your shirt. It's time." 2 options lay before me. 1, I could argue with her, explain again that being trans wasn't a phase and that I would be a boy even if she forced me into a bikini or a prom dress. Remind her that she was the one who gave me all those books about girls disguising themselves as knights or princesses who didn't want to be princesses anymore, and I was just taking those lessons to their logical conclusion. But that conversation would end with one or both of us crying, and it would solve exactly 0 problems. 2, I could put on a freaking blouse. Yes, it would feel like a paper bag filled with hair, and yes, I would be betraying myself, letting her win this battle like I let her win every battle, but it wouldn't change anything about who I was or what I knew about myself. All I had to do was disconnect my mind from my body, shut down emotionally, and I'd be fine. Piece of cake.
Gospel. The word gospel is rooted in Anglo-Saxon, means after much fiddling from Latin and Greek, God spell, good story, good news, and finally blossoms into good telling. As in a fable that weaves in and out of realms as it pleases, like fireflies that somehow miracle out of a sealed jar, or perhaps a tale that could goosebump the winter wind. As in sweet tea dreams, dessert eaten before supper, and crimson-crushed roses floating in black clawfoot tubs. Welcome. This is the absolutely true gospel of the leaving room. All departures require rules. Gospel, age unknown, 4 minutes. The gospel keeper. Rule 1, do not lie. Time might not be significant everywhere, but rules must be followed and memory must be recorded. The thing is, no memory recalls itself exactly correctly, so at the center of every good telling is the smooth marble of a lie. Most soulful things lie. Think of violins, innocent-looking instruments of the living. Their thrum struts into any melody, smaller than atoms kissing the infinite parts of air. Think of their hum, how it gently vibrates the nerves of the skin like pennies scraping stones on their descent into a wishing well. Sometimes I think I can hear them, the violins and the clicking of pennies, which should not be possible because this is a truth-filled place and keepers can't lie, and keepers can't lie because they don't have souls. Keepers are only atoms, matter, and some otherness. If you opened us up along our double-stitched seams, I believe only fireflies would flutter out.
They're at a standstill. Bobak feels that at any second, the soldier might shout at them to clear the way, to leave the area. They have taken control of this oil refinery for the English king and have no interest in talking to children. The sun is hot. Sana says, "What do we do?" as she kicks at the dirt. Bobak doesn't know. How can they even begin to communicate? Bobak gets the suffocating feeling that this is the whole world now, no one able to hear anyone else. Everyone with a different map of the same spot of ground. The sun remains hot. He wishes he could have some water. He wonders what the word is in English. In Farsi, it is ab, as in Baba abdad, father gave water. Bobak remembers something his own father used to say anytime Bobak was upset that Sana had taken his pencil, eaten his candy, cried for Baba's lap and gotten it. He said, "She's your sister, Bobak. If you want her to grow up, you have to help her. What we want others to know, we must teach them." Bobak puts down the blackboard. He takes a piece of chalk from his satchel and draws the outline of a canteen with a wavy line of water inside. He points to it and says, "Ob." All explanations and small talk and play of the language sits across a giant chasm of unknowing. And maybe they'll never become friends as a result. He writes the Farsi letters for water, ob. The English soldier smiles. He says a word that sounds like vata. Bobak nods, vata, ob. The soldier puts up one finger as in, wait here, and trots to a guardhouse. He returns with a jerry can of water. Bobak sighs with relief. He lets Sana go first. He writes the word for thank you. The soldier seems to understand. After they've emptied the can, Bobak writes his name. He points to himself and says, Ba-bak. The soldier repeats it. Bobak writes the Farsi letters. The soldier points to himself and says, Kalam Hargis. Sana says, did he just say his name is Kalam? Kalam is cabbage in Farsi. Bobak writes Kalam on the board. The officer looks at his own name. He tries to draw it in the air. Bobak offers the chalk. The soldier steps forward and tries to copy his name. Bobak notices that he smells like aftershave and pipe tobacco. He thinks a man like him must be the patriarch of a great house back in Engelestan, with 5 to 7 children already, a living wife, and horses for all of them to ride. Kalam's hand is clumsy, writing right to left. When he's done, it's like a child wrote it, but he seems to like it. He says, "Thank you, Bobak," because he knows those words now. And Bobak hands over the can of water and says, "Thank you, Cabbage."
I'll be reading an excerpt that takes place 24 hours after my main character decides to take the abortion pill. 24 hours later. The medical nurse warned me about the blood. Said shortly after taking the abortion pill, I would start to cramp and bleed for 5 to 7 days, a lot like a heavy period. Today, a lot like my first period, I carry the same secret and practice the same routine. Every few hours, hiding a used pad inside of a bag, inside of a bag, inside of a bag. Pray my mother never knows. The same prayer I prayed during June, July, and August when I was 10. Not much has changed about me since then. The pamphlets say grief and guilt are normal, and yet they never warned me about the guilt that comes with not feeling guilty enough, or that grief can linger even when guilt flees. My body holds so much grief, my life is a living wake. Grief is a rude-ass distant relative, always making himself at home with no warning and no offering. I grieve a friendship with Zariah that's now filled with lies, a relationship with Cameron that deep down I still miss, and a friendship with a slam team I barely knew. Most of all, I grieve the memory of a mother I never had and the secrets I'll never be able to share with her. The pamphlets never said, guilt can come even when I know I made the right decision for me. My heart had to wrestle with my shame to teach me that. Yet somehow I am thankful for all of the people who fought for my right to choose, know that I don't have to feel guilty for making the right decision for me and my body, know that Zariah, the protesters outside of the clinic, and even their God are wrong. It is my body and will always be my choice. And to feel guilty isn't to be guilty. Know that even in my mourning, I am allowed to feel relief. I am allowed to feel freed. This body. There is no anthem louder than when I sing to my own frame. There is nothing sweeter than tasting the words I love you on my own tongue. Declaration does not get much bolder than this. This sanctuary of bone and curve locked in flesh ain't nobody's but mine. Nothing better than knowing that this body mine, this body all mine. This body, all that, this body sometimes act too grown. This body sacred, this body holy, this body hell, this body hurt, this body rain like Sandy, Katrina, and Seattle. This body rain like Cleo, Latifah, and Mama. This body gonna be somebody someday. This body will carry body one day when she's ready. This body makes her own decisions. This body bang, this body blessed, this body broken, this body beautiful. Thank you.
Fever. The thing about monsters and spirits, the thing about myths come to life and folklore that sprouts wings, is that most people will never stop to wonder and look up at the sky to see me. 2. Jean-Pierre lives where there is space between the houses, and his fancy cars are crammed in the driveway like unused plastic-covered furniture. with this American dream of his, with this big city living of his, he has forgotten the stories of scorned island girls and women. We come for you in the night. He has never bothered to ask Mommy how we left the islands, by plane, by boat, by foot, by hoofs, by fins, or by wings. He has never asked us about the mortar or suspected our hidden magic. He counted his money instead, accusing my mother of stealing, even after forcing long hours into our days, forcing a fake smile onto our weary faces, forcing a life of servitude onto our life of power and magic. He never dared to find out if we are what we really are. Here, ambition takes the place of superstition, and the immigrants, like us, have turned their eyes away from the wonders of the unseen world. Maybe we are better for it. They will not hunt us if they don't believe we exist. 3, I have learned to seep through cracks in the wall. I have learned to ease through crevices in the concrete. Shapeshifters like me have to become the elements, humans and beasts of the earth, birds of prey and gusty wind in the air, rain showers and morning dew on flowers and little fires everywhere. I am made of vapor and vengeance. I am both ghost and deadly smoke. Jean-Pierre rests peacefully next to his wife, who is as sweet as the bread pudding she makes for the bakery. She lets me and Mommy take day-old loaves at the end of the workday, but she tolerates her husband's cruelty. She is trapped like us, so I leave her alone. Jean-Pierre's fat belly is even rounder as he sleeps. He is even louder as he snores without a care in the world in his big house with his many businesses and immigrant workers who do not have papers and proof of our existence. When I am smoke, I do not light up the room with my muted flame. When I am vapor, I can still see and smell and taste and know and remember, but I must never, ever turn to look at my reflection in the mirror, never. There is a huge one on the other side of his bedroom wall, tempting me to see what kind of monster I really am. But in this moment, I am more hungry than curious. I am more thirsty than vain. So as quick as a flicker of light, I descend on Jean-Pierre's chest as smoke, as heat, as a gruesome force for vengeance, for sustenance, and I inhale deep, deep, and he stops snoring.
Thank you so much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the finalists for the 2025 National Book Award for Translated Literature. Translator Jennifer Russell, who will be reading for Solveig Bella and Sophia Hersey-Smith. Gabriella Cabezon Camara and Robin Myers. Joseph O'Neill, who will be reading for Anya Danya and David McKay. Hamid Ismailov and Shelley Fairweather Vega. And translator Natasha Lehr, who will be reading for Nej Sino alongside Tess Gunty. Our translated literature honorees will approach the podium in groups by honored book. Welcome, Jennifer and Sophia.
Dag 1611. Men hvis vi er musik, er det en utilregnelig musik. Det er improvisationer og sære klange og uventede toner. Det er lange pauser og pludselige lyde. Mine dage er porøse. Jeg følger ingen mønstre. Jeg åbner døre og lukker dem igen. Indimellem sætter jeg mig ved bordet under vinduet og skriver, men mit sprog flyder over. Der er ikke noget helende ved sætninger. De falder fra hinanden. Der er skrald og roser, løse noter, der krøller sig sammen og forsvinder. Min dag er rodet, ubeslutsom. Jeg hopper ud af vinduet eller lister mig stilfærdigt ud af en dør. Jeg går hastigt rundt om huset, mens Thomas går ned ad trappen. Det sker, at jeg følger efter Thomas, når han forlader sit hus. Jeg har været i skoven, jeg er blevet fanget i regn og er kommet gennemblødt tilbage. Sommetider ser jeg ind af ruderne om aftenen, når han sidder og læser. Jeg dukker mig. Jeg skjuler mig bag en potteplanter eller bag bysten, som gamle Zelda har sat i sin vindueskarm. Jeg bytter rundt på dag og nat, og en af mine nætter tilbragte jeg i haveskuret. Der er kommet en uro ind i min dag. Der er kommet opbrudte mønstre og uforudsigelige rejser gennem husets rum. Der er kommet åbne værelser og lydløse døre i det, der engang var en velordnet dag. Der er kommet vågne nætter, pludselig søvn, trætte morgener og dage uden mønster. Jeg går ud på græsset om natten, alene, uden teleskoper eller håb. Jeg standser op på græsset. Stjernelys, måneskin, himmelskrald.
Day 1611. But if we are music, it is unpredictable music, made up of improvisations and strange pitches and unexpected notes, of long pauses and sudden noises. My days are porous. I follow no pattern. I open doors and close them again. Now and then, I sit at the table by the window to write, but my language overflows. There is no healing to be found in sentences. They disintegrate. There is garbage and roses, stray notes which curl up and disappear. My day is jumbled, indecisive. I climb out the window or slip silently through the door. I hurry around the side of the house as Thomas comes down the stairs. From time to time, I follow Thomas when he leaves his house. I've been to the woods. I've been caught in the rain and come back soaking wet. Sometimes I peer through the windows in the evening when he's reading. I crouch behind a potted plant or the best old Seltzer put on his windowsill. I mix up day and night, and one of my nights was spent in the shed on a bed of cushions from our garden furniture. A restlessness has got into my day, broken patterns and unpredictable journeys through the house. There are opened rooms and silenced doors in what was once an orderly day. Wakeful nights, sudden sleep, weary mornings and days with no structure. I walk across the grass at night alone, without telescopes or hope. I stop short. Starshine, moonlight, celestial waste. Thank you.
Agarra uno de los frutos y lo muerde, el paraíso. De existir uno, ni cuando novicia tuvo la certeza, es este, el estallido de la fruta dulce en la boca, este milagro que le deleita la lengua, el sol en la piel, el cuerpo en el agua. El paraíso es estas cosas. Y nada más, nada. Esta uva grande de piel negra, carne blanca y jugosa, y dos huesos violáceos barre con todos los males, hasta con los malos recuerdos y los malos olores. Antonio agarra más uvas y va hacia las niñas. Se sienta sobre el lienzo, abre los frutos, les quita los huesos, la piel y se los ofrece. Mi tacuñá los mastica lentamente. Michi no los quiere. Antonio, pajarraco una vez más, lo mastica un poco él mismo y se lo pone en la boquita. Michi traga. Lo hace varias veces, hasta que le corre la cara, suficiente. Permanecen quietas, en la alegría del sabor de los frutos en la boca, tal vez, o en el capullo de una hoja recién nacida del palo borracho. Se desenrolla y extiende como un puño abriéndose. Miran todos en la misma dirección. Antonio ha estado escribiendo con tal frenesí que apenas si se ha fijado en nada. Es un montón la selva tejiéndose, pero solo en eso se detuvo. Ni siquiera notó que su camisa le raspa. Se detiene, abre los botones y se mira. Tiene dos municiones tiernas y redondeadas. Dos flores cachorras en su piel vieja y llena de heridas. Pezones, rosados y tersos, los ha tenido siempre, pero es hoy que lo siente doler contra el tejido de la camisa.
He plucks a fruit and bites it. Paradise. If paradise is real, not even as a novice was he sure, it must be something like this. The rupture of the sweet fruit in his mouth, the miracle that enthralls his tongue, the sun on his skin, his body in the water. Paradise is made of such things, and nothing more, nothing at all. This great jet-skin grape, its white, luscious flesh and 2 violet pits, does away with all ills, even bad memories and bad smells. Antonio picks more grapes and returns to the girls, sits down on the cloth, splits the fruits. He removes the pits and skin and presents them to the children. Mitacuña chews slowly. Michi doesn't want to eat. Antonio, reduced to a big, ugly bird once more, chews a bit himself and puts it into her mouth. Michi swallows. He does this several times until she turns her face away. Enough. The girls are still, content with the taste of the fruit in their mouths, perhaps, or with the bud of a newborn silk floss leaf. It opens like a balled fist. They all look in the same direction. Antonio has been writing with such furor that he's barely noticed anything else. The jungle is a colossus weaving itself together, but only this did he notice. He didn't even realize that his shirt was scratching at his chest. He stops, unbuttons it, and regards himself. 2 round and tender pellets, 2 baby blossoms on his old scarred skin. Nipples, pink and smooth. He's always had them, but it's today that he feels them ache against the weave of his shirt.
De herinnerde soldaat. En zijn blik springt over haar crèmerode tegelpatroon naar haar toe en klimt voorzichtig in haar. En haar schoenen zijn oud, maar keurig gepoetst. En haar donkerbruine zondagse jurk is eenvoudig. En ook haar jas is niet chic. En haar ademhaling gaat snel en haar bloed bonst zichtbaar in haar hals. En oh, zegt ze. En het klinkt vreemd dierlijk. Alsof het een geluid is dat ondanks haarzelf aan haar lichaam ontsnapt. En hij kijkt haar in het gezicht. En nog nooit heeft hij zoveel stralend oprecht geluk gezien. Het is als huilen en lachen en dromen tegelijk. En ze is alles en iedereen om zich heen vergeten. Ze weet alleen dat hij er is. En hij had geen idee dat een mens zo naar een ander mens kon kijken. En hij lacht overrompeld naar haar. En zij wil naar hem toelopen, maar dokter De Moor gaat voor haar staan. En hij zegt dat ze beter niet bij zijn patiënt in de buurt kan komen. Maar dat is Amand, zegt ze, vol onbegrip. En dokter De Moor zegt dat ze rustig plaats moet nemen. En ze gaat op de stoel zitten tegenover die van dokter De Moor bij zijn bureau. En hij neemt de gegevens van haar man met haar door. Amand Stefaan Koppens, 35 jaar oud, 1,63 meter lang, vermist geraakt bij Diksmuiden op 18 december 1917. En ja, zegt ze afwezig, dat klopt allemaal. En intussen kijkt ze naar hem alsof ze haar ogen niet kan geloven.
And his eyes slide across the red and beige tiles to where she stands, and cautiously climb their way upward. And her shoes are old, but shined to a high gloss, and her dark brown Sunday dress is plain, and her coat is not fashionable either, and her breathing is quick, and her pulse pounds visibly in her throat, and oh, she says, a strange animal noise that seems to have escaped her body in spite of her. And he looks her in the face. And never before has he seen so much genuine, beaming happiness. It's like crying and laughing and dreaming all at once. And she has forgotten everything and everyone around her. She knows only that he is there. And he had no idea one person could look at another that way. And he smiles at her, dumbfounded. And she starts to ward him, but Dr. Demore stands in her way and tells her she'd better not get too close to his patient. "But that's Amand," she says, in a tone of bewilderment. And Dr. Demore instructs her to sit down and remain calm. And she sits in the chair in front of his desk, and he goes over her husband's particulars with her. Amand Stefan Coppens, age 35, height 1.63 meters, disappeared near Dixmude on the 18th of December, 1917. And yes, she says distractedly, that's all correct. And meanwhile, she is staring at him as if she can't believe her eyes.
And now practice or brush off your Uzbek. Dunyoning tagiga yetish uchun baridan ajrash kerak ekan. Barini yo'qotish lozimmish. Lekin katta o'ylamay tursin hozircha. Mayda narsalarga diqqatini tortsin. She'rda ham shunday emasmi? Katta narsalarga chalg'ish she'rning o'lim tushagida topish. She'rni she'r qiluvchi narsa bu o'sha oddiy tafsilotdek tuyulgani butun dunyoni anglatuvchi mayda chuydalar emasmi? Deylik, hozir ham u neki bilayotgan esa bularning barini she'rlardan bilardi. Yillarcha do'sti AI bilan tarjima qilganlardan. Mana xarob bo'lib o'tirgan yerining choyxona emas, xarobot deb atalishi ham o'sha g'azallardan olingan bilim emasmi? Ma'noda ramz olursa muammo kalomda. Tolib u she'rga bil ulamoyi zamonadir. Dilbarlarning tafakkurga yo'q tabi, ularning sevganlari faqat g'azali oshiqonadir.
To reach the very bottom of the world, apparently one had to separate oneself from everything, lose everything. But now is not the time for big thoughts. You had to focus on the small things. It was the same with a poem, wasn't it? Get distracted by the big stuff and your poem dies. Wasn't the thing that made a poem its perception of ordinary details, the bits and pieces that explain the entire world? For instance, whatever he happened to know right now, he had learned it all from poems, from what he and his friend AI had spent years translating. It was knowledge taken from those ghazals, which came not from sitting around the ruined local tea house, but from the ruinous local tavern. If the symbol dies in the meaning or the riddle in the speaking, you know the time has come for the pupil to be master to the poem. The world's most stunning lovers are not inclined to thinking. The only thing they love is the passion for the poem.
J'ai une image très nette d'être en train de faire la vaisselle pendant que ma mère boit le thé avec une amie. Je suis énervée parce qu'on m'oblige encore à faire la vaisselle, parce qu'elles ont une conversation d'adultes à laquelle je ne participe pas, parce qu'on ne me prête aucune attention, alors que j'aimerais prendre part à ce moment d'intimité. Je frotte mes assiettes rageusement avec une éponge double face et je pense à la phrase que je pourrais dire. Il me viole depuis que je suis petite. C'est pour ça que je le déteste. Il ne fait que me violer. Je la répète mentalement de plus en plus fort. Il me viole sans arrêt. Je me promène sur ce fil tendu entre deux falaises, entre le monde d'avant et le monde d'après cette phrase. Il me viole. Viole, viole. D'un côté, l'existence telle qu'on l'a connue. De l'autre, un nouveau monde qui commencerait avec la phrase, suivi de la réaction des deux femmes et de ce qui s'en suivrait. Ce serait une suite plutôt horrible, je le sais. Nous serions cette fois pour de vrai dans la détresse. Il faudrait qu'il parte, qu'il aille en prison. Ma mère seule avec 4 enfants. On nous placerait dans les foyers des familles d'accueil. Mes frères et sœurs n'auraient pas d'enfance heureuse. Mais moi, j'aurais mon petit moment de gloire. Un seul mot suffirait. Viol. Si ma langue bute sur la phrase, comme dans les rêves où votre bouche se transforme en pâte infâme quand vous essayez de crier, je pourrais toujours hurler ça ou l'écrire sur le mur avec mon éponge. V-I-O-L, 4 lettres. Et tout serait changé. Mais je ne dis rien. Je finis ma vaisselle. Je ne dis rien, mais je sais que j'ai ce pouvoir.
I have one very clear recollection. I'm washing dishes while my mom is drinking tea with a friend. I'm annoyed because they still make me wash the dishes, because I'm excluded from their grown-up conversation, because no one's paying me any attention, and I'd like to be included. I'm scrubbing the plates furiously with a double-sided sponge and thinking about what I could say. He's been raping me ever since I was little. That's why I hate him. All he does is rape me. It's going round and round in my head, getting louder and louder. He keeps raping me. I'm walking a tightrope between two cliffs, the world before I utter these words and the world after. He rapes me, rapes, rapes. On one side, life as we know it. On the other, a new world that will begin with these words, the two women's reactions, and everything that follows. It would be horrible, that I know. It would mean real hardship. He'd have to leave, he'd go to jail. My mother left on her own with 4 children. We'd be sent to children's homes or foster parents. My brother and sisters wouldn't have happy childhoods. But I would have my brief moment of glory. One word would be all it took. Rape. If my tongue stuttered on the word the way in dreams your mouth turns into a disgusting paste when you try to scream, I could always howl it out or trace it on the wall with the sponge. R-A-P-E. 4 letters, and everything would change. But I say nothing. I finish the dishes. I say nothing, but I know I have the power.
Thank you all. And now we'll have a brief 10-minute intermission. Please make sure to purchase multiple copies of each finalist book and return to your seats promptly so we can begin on time. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to continue hearing from tonight's readers. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce the finalists for the 2025 National Book Award for Poetry. Gabrielle Calvacaresi, Kathy Lynn Chai, Tiana Clark, Richard Sykin, and Patricia Smith. Please help me welcome to the podium, Gabrielle.
Miss you. Would like to shoot some hoops with you for Oliver Bays-Bendorf. Don't have to be dead for me to miss you. Miss you. Would like to shoot some hoops with you. Ask you to teach me how to shoot buckets with ease. Wish you could show me your layup, your alley-oop, how to tussle without getting hurt. What chain are you wearing? You know I want one too. Thick as licorice and gleaming. Wish you could help me be the flyest guy on the court. Don't bring anybody but your own. You're perfect. Wish we could wear matching basketball shorts. High five all the folks on the benches, trash talking bravado. The sun is so in love with us. I'm Greek like Giannis. My sneakers come from Mount Olympus. I'm the fiercest porcupine in the den. Pal, let's drink from bright fountains, light drips from our stubbly chins. Miss you, barreling down the court, bouncing. Look at us living. Imagine. Miss you. Would like to take a walk with you. Do not care if you just arrive in your skeleton. Would love to take a walk with you. Miss you. Would love to make you shrimp saganaki like you used to make me when you were alive. Love to feed you. Sit over steaming bowls of pilaf, little roasted tomatoes covered in pepper and nutmeg. Miss you. Would love to walk to the post office with you. Bring the ghost dog. We'll walk past the waterfall, and you can tell me about the after. Wish you would come back for a while. Don't even need to bring your skin sack. I'll know you. I know you'll know me, even though I'm bigger now. Grayer, I'll show you my garden. I'd like to hop in the leaf pile you raked, but if you want to jump in, I'll rake it for you. Miss you, standing, looking out at the river with your rake in your hand. Miss you in your puffy blue jacket. They're hip now. I can bring you a new one if you'll only come by. No, I told you it was okay to go. No, I told you it was okay to leave me. Why'd you believe me? You always believed me. Wish you would come back so we could talk about truth. Miss you. Wish you would walk through my door. Stare out from the mirror. Come through the pipes.
Hi. This year marks 50 years since the end of the Vietnam War, and I'm a child of Vietnam War refugees. And this poem is about what it means to be on the other side, watching a genocide live streamed on my phone. Live stream. Keep watch. Turn the camera, dilate in our hundreds, our thousands, our millions, eaten, have you, slept? To the activists who fought for me, did my family die less? Are families dying less today as I send poetry money to buy food and tents? Last year, the average American paid $5,109 to the US military. Death could not be funded without us. In our thousands, our millions, our munitions. I go to the literary nonprofit party. I smile into the camera, step and repeat, touch phones, exchange contacts. What does our refusal look like? Over plates of donated cheese and wine, over the meat of a killed lamb. If I can eat, I must ask, have you eaten yet, slept, I in my warm apartment, you wet through the winter, turn the camera back and forth. From the karaoke room, I sing, I will survive. I was barred from learning music by my mother, who tabulated the cost of violin rentals and after-school lessons against the labor of each dress she assembled. I have chased music my whole life, learned from my nerdy friends in a public library how to bounce my shoulders, roll my hips. Now, I'm in love with the composer. He sees a guitar and hears sound. I see language as syllabics and breath, two bodies moving balletically past one another inside my bathroom's narrow strictures. At protests, he'd beat the drums as students marched, demanding answers for the disappeared. Music, the heartbeat of a movement. Journalists hungry, but reporting. I weigh my eating at a restaurant against helping someone else eat. Sometimes I stay home. Sometimes I watch my credit balloon and collect reading fees and jurying, banking this against a zero-interest credit card that will charge 22% come June. I have read the budget proposal, the cost of dropping bombs on 5 countries, disinvestment, collapsing tourism, startup capital withering, credit downgrade. We join your risk so that you are less alone. Turn the camera back and forth. I write to you from the afterlife of near annihilation. Thank you.
Maybe in another life. I think of the kids I may or may not have. I think about their hair, the possible dark brown curls, baby fingers tapping on my face. I haven't made up my mind yet, but my body is making decisions before I am ready to make them. I can't seem to say what it is I want out loud. I can almost see all my different lives, almost taste them, like trying to catch the tail end of a cinematic dream before it evaporates. I want to capture it, a glimpse, sneak a peek at each distant future before the Viewmaster reel clicks. I want to follow the perfume of each life I could live and linger in it. The vanillas, milk leaking from my breast, cereal, the piquant odor of parenthood. The one where I am a mother negotiating happiness, the one where I am not a mother and still negotiating happiness, beauty, and rest. Almost 39, and I've never loved myself more, yet nostalgia wavers all around me like a montage of mirages, muddling memories, complicating hope, making me miss things I've already mourned. The bargaining, ain't it a bitch? The bargaining aspect of grief. To constantly release that which I've already let go of, but how the water in my mind brings it all back like the flood current each day, and each morning in the ebb, I see the sea floor for what it is. Another landscape of loss and renewal, another augur deciphering the tea leaves in the tide pool, revealing the children I might never name, have, or hold. There is a finite number of eggs and books inside me. I am trying to release them, I'm trying to mourn the possible futures bursting before me in a fantastic finale of fireworks, bursting in my mouth like red caviar as I try to find the right words to say goodbye to little faces I could only imagine. I'm not sure what I want. Each decision seems to dissolve at the edge of the beach, softened by the watercolor cream of winter floating above the same shore where Eliot wrote The Wasteland after a mental breakdown 101 years before me, writing, "On Margate sands, I can connect nothing with nothing." I keep looking at the gentle waves for answers without trying to make another metaphor. What if the image of what I'm feeling is too heavy to be carried over into language? Maybe in another life, you get to live out all the lives you've imagined. Maybe in this life, I become who I am by not knowing.
Family therapy. The morning after my father killed his first wife, he woke up next to her dead body, rose from their bed, and began his morning routine. At lunch, from his office, he called the landlord and asked him to check on her. He was worried, he said. The night before, he had taken her pill bottles and lined them up on the bathroom counter. He said unkind things, using words like burden and ruin. He stood in the doorway and wouldn't let her pass until the bottles were empty. They went to bed. He said goodnight. She said goodbye. They turned their backs to each other under the thick blankets. This is what he said, my father, in family therapy a few months before he died. I had already figured it out, mostly. The other son had always been more tender, gullible, and it was his mother, not mine, so you can see how it would be easier for me to get my head around it. They watched each other, trying to figure out who was getting their head around it. The therapist watched my father watched the other son. The other son turned away and looked out the window where the wind was pushing some leaves around. I confess, I feel bad for the landlord. He must have known. The body had been dead all night. I imagine him with his heavy ring of keys, unlocking all the doors to all the rooms he's been responsible for, year after year, until he's no longer surprised by the residue. Empty bottles in a mirrored cabinet, a wedding ring at the edge of a sink.
The recipe for hot water cornbread is simple. Cornmeal, hot water. Mix till sluggish, then dollop in a sizzling skillet. When you smell the burning begin, flip it. When you smell the burning begin again, dump it onto a plate. You've got to wait for the burning and get it just right. Before the bread cools down, smear it with sweet salted butter and smash it with your fingers. Crumble it up in a bowl of collard greens or buttermilk. Forget that I'm telling you, it's the first thing I ever cooked. That my daddy was laughing and breathing and no bullet in his head when he taught me. Mix it till it looks like quicksand, he'd say, till it moves like a slow song sounds. We'd sit there in the kitchen, licking our fingers and laughing at my mother, who was probably scrubbing something with bleach, or watching Bonanza, or thinking how stupid it was to be burning that nasty old bread in that cast iron skillet. When I told her that I'd made my first ever pan of hot water cornbread and that my daddy had branded it glorious, she sniffed and kept mopping the floor over and over in the same space. So here's how you do it. You take out a bowl, like the one we had with blue flowers and only one crack. You put the cornmeal in it. Then you turn on the hot water and you let it run while you tell the secret about the boy who kissed your cheek after school, or about how you really want to be a reporter instead of a teacher or a nurse like Mama said. And the water keeps running while Daddy says, you will be a wonderful writer. And you will be famous someday. And if I wrote you a letter and sent you some money, would you write about me? And he is laughing and breathing and no bullet in his head. So you let the water run into this mix until it moves like mud moves at the bottom of a river, which is another thing Daddy said. And even though I'd never even seen a river, I knew exactly what he meant. Then you turn the fire up way under the skillet and you pour in this mix that moves like mud moves, like the bottom of a river, like quicksand, like slow song sounds. That stuff pops something awful when it first hits that blazing skillet, and sometimes Daddy and I would dance to those angry pop sounds. He let me rest my feet on top of his while we waltzed around the kitchen, and my mother huffed and puffed on the other side of the door. When you are famous, Daddy asked me, will you write about dancing in the kitchen with your father? I say everything I write will be about you. Then you will be famous too. And we dip and swirl and spin, but he stops and sniffs the air. The thing you have to remember about hot water cornbread is to wait for the burning so you know when to flip it. And then again so you know when it's crusty and done. Then eat it the way we did, with our fingers, our feet still tingling from dancing. But remember that sometimes the burning takes such a long time. And in that time, sometimes, poems are born.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce the finalists for the 2025 National Book Award for Nonfiction. Omar El-Akkad, Julia Yaffe, Ian Lee, Claudia Rowe, and Jordan Thomas. Welcome, Omar.
She is fog-colored when they find her. She believes she has ended. Like porters in service of some grotesque nobility, 6 men carry the stretcher out of something cavernous, something that used to be a home. And she, a girl of 9 or 10, is whisked away. Sitting on the stretcher, dazed and bloodied, she looks off to the side. She appears to be searching. The men who carry the stretcher move with urgency, as if the doing of care, of gentleness, can undo what has happened to this girl, to this place, to the bodies yet to be dug from beneath the rubble. Someone nearby asks God for revenge. Perhaps God is here somewhere, also searching. A soldier I met years ago who made the study of industrial violence his hobby once told me the first thing that kills when a bomb goes off isn't shrapnel or fire. It's the overpressure wave, air forced violently outward from the site of the blast. What you're supposed to do, he said, is drop to the ground and cover your ears. Breathe out. Empty your lungs before the air collides with and flattens them. Of course, if you're close enough, nothing you do or don't do will make any difference at all. He said the force of the overpressure wave weakens in proportion to the cube of the distance from the site of impact, which is to say, the most effective thing you can do to avoid getting killed by a missile or a mine or a grenade is to be far away when it goes off. How do you do that, I asked. Do what? Know when a thing like that is about to happen, know to be far away. Well, he said, and trailed off. A few minutes later, he was telling the story of a freak accident his daughter had suffered as a toddler, how carrying her to the emergency room was the scariest thing he'd ever experienced. Even in his line of work, even with all he'd seen, the scariest thing. As the men carry the girl out of what used to be her home, she asks if they're going to take her to the cemetery. One of the men says, "Masha'Allah, Masha'Allah." In literal translation, the word means what God wills. A closer approximation of meaning, of one meaning, is something like, what has happened is what God willed. But English, tasked with a word like this, turns stiff and monophonic, and masha'Allah is orchestral. To any ear that grew up on this language, it is clear that what the man means when he says this word is something else entirely. Something instantly familiar to generations who've heard it spilling out the mouths of beaming grandmothers at the end of piano recitals and graduation ceremonies and at the first sight of a newborn. Used this way, it finds its principal purpose as an expression of joy. Look at this wonderful thing God has done. MashaAllah. Language, too, forces the air from the lungs. Thank you.
First, I want to say happy birthday to my mother. Soviet soldiers surged into battle with the same standard battle cry, for Stalin, for the motherland. Yet somehow, the Second World War became known to Russians as the Great Fatherland War. It capped 3 decades of bloodletting on Soviet territory, starting with World War I, followed by the revolution, civil war, famine, collectivization, and mass political repressions. Taken together, the 30 years before Victory Day carried off more than 50 million Soviets. In the years between the Nazi invasion and the Soviet counteroffensive that drove them out, some 27 million Soviets were killed. By some estimates, the Soviet Union lost 15% of its population in just 4 years. Most of the dead were men. In 1939, on the eve of the Great Fatherland War, there were 8 million more Soviet women than men. The war only exaggerated that imbalance. In some places, the gender ratio was so skewed after 1945 that there were only 19 men for every 100 women. And yet, as one of the victors, the Soviet Union had emerged a superpower on the world stage. Stalin and his lieutenants knew that the contradiction was untenable. A powerful country needed a large and expanding population. It needed people to rebuild all that was ruined, to run massive factories and till the soil of giant mechanized farms, and perhaps to fight once again the kind of war it had just won. Even before the war was over, Stalin understood that the Soviet Union would need to solve this demographic crisis. It would need to replace its dead. There is an apocryphal story that when he was warned about the catastrophic losses the Red Army would suffer while taking this or that city, he replied, "It's fine. Russian women will have more." He probably never actually said this, but he didn't have to. It was his unspoken strategy for everything. For Stalin, great achievements in industry and politics and in war required proportionally vast human sacrifice. And no matter how many Soviet citizens he laid down on these altars of modernity, Soviet women would always step into the breach. They would pick up guns and climb into the cockpits of planes in which they burned like matchsticks. They would give up their sons for the country, pretend their children were heroes rather than mere cannon fodder. And when those sons fell in battle, they would have more.
I think about counting days and marking time, and my thoughts inevitably return to my children. That a mother can no longer mother her children won't change the fact that her thoughts are mostly a mother's thoughts. I think about Vincent's clothes, which I had packed and then unpacked to hang up in the closet after we moved into the house. Bright t-shirts, light-colored pants, at least a dozen woolen and cashmere scarves, which he had chosen for himself in Scotland the summer before he died, while laughing at his vanity. I think about James' clothes, too. Jeans that are the same brand and the same 3 dark shades, t-shirts with mathematical illustrations, 20 pairs of identical socks, plain white, unlike Vincent's socks, all in bright color. A few years earlier, a student of Christiana's died from suicide, and she wrote to me, "These are the sad days for me. A student I was close to for the past 4 years died last week. I will speak at his service in the chapel tomorrow, and I want to share here with you this line from a German poem that I intend to read, my informal translation. There are times in life when the world seems to stand still, and when it turns again, nothing is as before. If the world seemed to stand still once, it is stiller now. That a mother can do all things humanly possible for her children, and yet cannot keep them alive. This is a fact that eschews any adjective. Children die, and parents go on living. This, too, is a fact that defies all adjectives. When Vincent's phone was returned to us, only a corner of it was fractured. When Jane's backpack was returned to us, among a stack of papers, all unused, there was a pencil. It was broken into halves at the same moment James died. These are facts too, and I think about them often. In this abyss that I call my life, facts, with their logic, meaning, and weight, are what I hold on to. It's not much, this holding on, and yet, it's the best I can do. And this book for James, I don't think it will live up to his standard. There was never a single argument between James and me, and there were many arguments between Vincent and me. Vincent had made demands I could not meet in his life, but James put up with what I was not able to do for him. Within my capacity, I have loved and taken care of James. Within his capacity, he allowed me to mother him. Sometimes a mother and a child are like two hands placed next to each other, only just touching, or else with fingers intertwined. Then the world turns, and one hand is left, holding on to everything and nothing that is called now, and now, and now, and now.
The D train from Coney Island had a comforting rumble. That was part of the problem. It always lulled Tina to sleep. She'd lean her head against the smudgy window, listen to the ka-chung, ka-chung of metal wheels on the track, and it was hard to keep her eyes open, hard to stay alert. Outside, New York City was cool and rainy, but the subway was warm, and at night, usually empty, since everyone was holed up at home for the pandemic. She could hop on at Stillwell Avenue, ride all the way up to the Bronx, and back down through Brooklyn without talking to another person. Even then, Tina couldn't really sleep. Not enough to forget. You had to guard against the creeps. And in the morning, little shards of commuter conversations cut into your dreams. Tina could feel people staring, even when her eyes were closed. Like now. She shook herself awake. The smell of perfume and coffee announced a new day, and she knew she looked horrible, like a homeless person, since that's what she was. But fuck these people in their business suits staring down at her. How did it come to this? Tina wondered. 3 months earlier, she'd been on her way, 16 years old and taking care of herself just fine. Found a room to rent in Philly, paid for it with money she'd earned. Now she was living on the subway. It was better, sort of, when she could kick it with the girls from the Children's Center. They'd laugh and smoke on the platform, stay out of the rain, maybe swipe some candy from a newsstand. But Tina knew this was no solution to her problems. How long could you live on a train? After the financial district, when the subway car cleared out, she let her mind wander back to the year with her mom, then back before that to Philly and all the foster homes, then all the way back to Florida and the years with her grandma. Could anything have changed her path? She could not believe how low she'd fallen, scrunched into a corner with her hoodie pulled down over her face. What was that thing she'd read about the butterfly effect? How something as quiet as a butterfly beating its wings could cause a hurricane half a world away. The idea obsessed her. What if her mother had never filed that bullshit missing persons report? She never would have been listed as a runaway. And if she hadn't been a runaway, the cops wouldn't have taken her to the youth shelter in Manhattan. And if she'd never landed there, Tina was pretty sure she wouldn't have got caught up in all the shit she was hiding from now on the train. But you couldn't change the past. The worst thing Tina could imagine was sitting in a locked cell, wishing she could go back in time.
The megafire was throwing embers ahead of its advance, starting smaller fires, spot fires, like raiding parties for an approaching army. Axel, a squad boss, called us toward one that was smoking in the valley below. If we let it grow, it would rush up and cross our line, igniting the forest behind us and trapping us in its path. If the fire gets behind us, Axel said, we're fucked. Scrambling down loose rocks into the valley, we followed Axel's shout and found the spot fire. It had grown to the size of a football field. We cut around it, choked with smoke. In the ringing silence that follows a chainsaw's scream, I realized that the silence was becoming a roar, and the roar came from the megafire. It was close. The understory of the forest began to glow, a vibration emanating from its depths, rising to the sound of a jet engine. The treetops groaned with the wind created by the force of the megafire. On the fire line, I rarely felt adrenaline. I experienced danger more as a pressure, a weight that never fully disappeared. As the danger grew, so did the weight. With the megafire roaring through the trees, I had dropped my chainsaw and begun filing the saw's teeth to new points. Now the chainsaw shook in my hands. Listen, Axel cocked his head with wild eyes and a feral grin. You hear it. Let's get out of here. Axel led our escape, men sweating as the moon rose like a counterweight to the setting sun. A radio crackled, Aoki, warning that the fire line was no longer safe and we should hurry down the ridge to our vehicles. I shouted to Axel, several headlamps ahead, that we were throwing away the past week of work. It's part of the job, Axel replied. You'll get used to it. His reply evoked a hotshot adage. You learn to let go of hope, or you get crushed. As we walked, our headlamps cast beams through clouds of smoke and dust, illuminating the trees around us like pillars supporting another world. Forced to retreat, I felt like we were abandoning that world. Just before reaching our vehicles, I stopped to look back at the megafire. It was a billowing column of shadow and light. Briefly, I doubted what I'd seen. Through a gap in the trees, a lone flame rose and flickered above the rest. Only a sequoia, a tree that had coexisted with fire for millennia, could carry flames so high.
And finally, it is my pleasure to introduce the finalists for the 2025 National Book Award for Fiction. Rabi Almadeen, Megha Majumdar, Karen Russell, Ethan Rutherford, and Brian Washington. Please give Rabi a warm welcome.
Hi. I begin this story with the lie, and like the great whale leading other sea creatures in her wake, it was followed by a whole pod. I wish I can say I had doubts. I didn't. I Jonad that whale, swam right through and settled in. Gullibility and I have always been chummy. In my defense, the offer seemed real, and in a sense it was, and when it arrived, I was desperate. Hook, line, and harpoon, I was in. An organization called the American Excellence Foundation sent me an email on Friday evening, July 23rd, 2021. The foundation was based in the state of Virginia all the way over in America. And in spite of its name, its mission was supposed to be global, as in, it claimed to be a nonprofit fighting disease, poverty, hunger, and inequity around the world. Impressive. And I was impressed, particularly with the content of the email. Yada, 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 they were great. Blah, 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 I was great. Yada, 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 and my literary sensibility was both courageous and excellent, if not exactly American. blah, 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 so they'd like to offer me a residency at their subtly restored bucolic farm in central Virginia for 3 months, where they'd board me, feed me, pay me $100 a day, and provide me the space and unfettered time to work on whatever I was working on. The only hesitation I felt when I received that email was that I wasn't working on anything. Hadn't worked on anything for more than 25 years, and had no intention of working on anything in the future either. I had written a book, you see, 25 years earlier, but I'm not a writer. Not really. I wrote a book. That was it. It was an accident. No, the lie wasn't that I received an offer as a writer and I wasn't. I never claimed to be. I taught French philosophy at a high school. I was 61 years old when the damn offer arrived, and I'd been teaching the same class at the same school in Beirut for 36 years. My high school alma mater offered me a job in the summer of 1985 during the middle of the Civil War. I was to start teaching that fall, and I was worried that since I'd be spending most of my time in French, my Japanese might atrophy. I began a writing project in Japanese, an essay dealing with taking long walks in Beirut while the Civil War was going on. I thought I'd work on whatever it was that I was writing during the summer and finish, for the practice, mind you, just to improve my written Japanese. I ended up working on the project for 9 years. Turned out to be a book of 96 pages. Taking so much time to finish such a small book should have been a signal to anyone and everyone that I was not a writer.
It was her duty as a guardian to put into action the beautiful ideal of hope. Ma thought harshly this was what it looked like. Hope for the future was no shy bloom, but a blood-maddened creature, fanged and toothed, with its own knowledge of history's hostilities. Famine had visited before. 1943, for example, those black and white newspaper photos in which people appeared as sunken eyes and twig-thin limbs, facing a photographer who could do nothing for them. Their fullness, their love, their humor, their annoyance, their preference, bared by the lens to reveal what remained, which was hunger. No, hope wasn't soft or tender. It was mean. It snarled. It fought. It deceived. And Ma realized that on this day, perhaps hope lived in opening the doors of the house to a thief. After all, Ma was leaving in 7 days. Soon she would go to the American consulate and collect the passports with climate visas inside. And in 7 days, she would be aboard a plane grading upward, its motion so beyond human comprehension that it would feel like stillness. All Ma needed to do was survive these 7 days.
A person can lose everything in an instant. A fortune, a family, the sun. I've had to learn this lesson twice in my life. The first time it happened, I was a 15-year-old fugitive from the home for unwed mothers. The second time, I was a prisoner chained to my cot in a cinder block jailhouse.
Your second home, the sheriff liked to say. Officially, I do not exist in his West. Nevertheless, it is a crime to pay me a visit. On Black Sunday, before you knew to call it Black Sunday, I woke up in the jailhouse to a sound like a freight train tunneling through me, an ear-splitting howl that seemed to shake the stone walls. My body trembled like a husk on the cot. My fingers clawed into the mattress. For those early moments in the dark, I was nothing but the fear of floating off. What had happened to me while I slept? It felt as if a knife had scraped the marrow from my bones. Something vital inside me had liquefied and drained away, and in its place was the new weightlessness, lightness, and wrongness, a blanketing whiteness that ran up my spine and seeped out of my mouth. Bankrupt was the word that rose in my mind. At first, I did not recognize the voice crying out for help as my own. I clamped down on the sound, panicked. I could not afford to lose any more ballast. My numb limbs began to prickle with feeling, pins and needles stitching them back to my brain. It was not a happy reunion. 10 white toes sprouted like mushrooms on the edge of a filthy green blanket, waving to me from the outermost limit of what I could make out. A kerosene lantern in the hallway gave off a feeble emerald glow, beyond which the cell plunged into shadow. Not even the pain was mine. It came and went like the wind. Then it drilled through my skin and swallowed the world. Or perhaps the black blizzard was already well underway when I woke up. Choking heat filled the jailhouse, along with lashing tails of dust. It occurred to me that I might be buried here before I could recollect who I was. My job returned to me before my name did. Yes, I am the antidote I learned and remembered. I am a prairie witch. A door swung open onto my life.
On deck, the boys have jumped to the Esther's rigging and climbed to the top of the mast where the hoops sit. Little ones, the mate calls again. He waves to get their attention. Do not fall from there, he says, cupping his hands. I've seen it. But the boys can't hear him. For at their height, the wind whistles low and deep at their ears, and it leaves little room for any other sound. And the hoops now, they brace with their hands and they push and they stand. Ashore, when the signing agent had heard of their circumstances, no mother, no father, no money, little food, one awful experience after another, he'd placed his hand on their shoulders. It shudders my soul, he said. He would have preferred to sign older boys on the manifest, but no one wanted to hunt the polar whale. And if you had no other names, you filled your line and you looked to the next. The ship will teach you, he said. He'd sent younger children to sea before. Many of them had taken sick or died. It's a pity, yes. But no one ever came knocking at his door about it when they were orphans. They are 10 and 12 years old. He'd written their ages as 12 and 14. Life's tragedy ends, he said, and he signed them in. It shudders my soul. They pull the salt air into their lungs, and the sun is close on their necks. Their shirts snap behind them like flags in the wind. Below, they can see the men scurrying about on deck, trimming sails, stowing gear, laughing. Neither boy has ever been farther from New Bedford than the Dartmouth harbor, never farther into the blue water than a quick row. Within a few hours of departing, they see nothing at all of that old land. Goodbye, they call, farewell, we'll never see you again. Do not fall, the mate cries once more, and this time they hear, but they pay no mind. Of course they will not fall. They are determined to spot each whale the Esther darts. High above the deck now, they think of themselves as small birds gifted with quick flight. Or no, they are large birds. They are frigates with keen eyesight and sharp talons. And in the rigging, they are monkeys in the jungle.
She met Cheryl at the airport, a 24-hour layover. The mother's friend had dyed the tips of her hair a golden orange, wearing boots and a coat that reached just past her ankles. But still, even in the crowd, recognition. "You live here by yourself," said Cheryl. She touched the walls, stepping through the mother's home, ran her hand across the table. She picked up a photo of the sons together and then 2 different frames of their individual pictures, a photo of Earl, another of Stefan. Then Cheryl sat on the sofa, crossing her legs. She said, "It's comfier than ours was," laughing. "Toronto," said Cheryl for a while, then Chicago, Chengdu, Hanoi, London, Berlin, New York, and then Toronto again. Cheryl told the mother this as they talked at a nearby cantina. It was their first meal that day. 2 mariachi band members softly strummed chords behind them, tuning up before an evening show. Cheryl said, "I was looking for something. Wasn't sure where it was or what it was." And the mother said, "Well, when did you know?" And Cheryl said, "I met someone a little while after I moved out, stayed with her. We moved to Illinois before we broke up. Then I met another woman in Vietnam. We moved to London and went our separate ways in New York. We're still in touch, but it took me a little while, to figure things out." And now, Cheryl said, holding up her ring finger, the mother chewed, looking on. And then the mother said, "Do you have a photo?" Cheryl gave her a look, analyzing the mother's expression. Then she scrolled through her phone, showing picture after picture of them together, and also a little girl. And the mother said, "Ah." Cheryl said, "Surrogate, if you can believe it." And the mother said, "How far from God you've fallen." And Cheryl said, "Ha," chewing another taco, "It all looks like God to me." When they stepped inside of the lesbian bar, the mother felt herself vibrating just a little bit. Cheryl paid for their drinks. They took a seat on the patio. Women sat among other groups of women alongside a handful of men. The mother lived in Houston for years, but she'd never seen the shade of evening sky above her at that moment. And it was hard to believe, she thought, that she was sharing the same dusk with everyone else. And Cheryl said, "I always envied you a little bit at first." And the mother said, "I can't imagine why," stretching. And Cheryl said, "You had everything figured out. A husband." And the mother said, "Look." And Cheryl said, "It's fine, that's not what I'm getting at. Earl was a good man, just not for me. You had someone, is what I'm saying. A way to be, a home and all that." "And look what it got me," said the mother. Cheryl said, "Looks like it got you a lot." And the mother said, "Yeah, well, here you are, wife and a baby, the nuclear family." And Cheryl said, "I can hardly believe it myself." And the mother said, "I can. You wear it well." And then Cheryl looked at the mother, she whistled. She said, "We're too clean in this life, could have covered twice as much ground in half the time." And the mother said, "Perhaps, but we're still here." Then Cheryl said, and the mother did too. They watched a pair of young women lean against each other, laughing and moving to the music. Cheryl started to look for a hotel, but the mother insisted she stay in her home. When they stepped through the door again, the mother told her she'd only be a moment, stepping into the bedroom to shower and change. But when she entered the living room, Cheryl had already fallen asleep. She dozed with her arms crossed on the sofa, her feet folded underneath her. The mother watched her. Then she covered her with a blanket from the sofa. The mother took a seat on the other side, folding her knees onto it, covering herself with the blanket's other end. When she woke up, she couldn't remember the last time she'd slept so soundly.
One more huge round of applause for our 2025 National Book Award finalists. What tremendous gifts you have all given us. Thanks to our special guests, Tess Gunty and Joseph O'Neill, our fabulous ASL interpreters, Emilio Garcia and Miriam Rockford, Really Useful Media, and NYU Skirball. A friendly reminder that all of these incredible books are available for sale in the lobby until 10 p.m. with thanks again to McNally Jackson Books. And one more huge thank you to the National Book Foundation and the NYU Creative Writing Program for making this evening possible, and to our wonderful audience here at NYU, Skirball, and those tuning in online for joining us. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.